Today, I'm going to talk about neurotransmitters, the brain's chemicals. Your brain communicates neurochemically. That means the neurons, to perform a certain action or task, in order to do that task or action, the neurons have to neurochemically communicate with each other through brain chemicals called neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and various hormones. It's up to 100 neurotransmitters, and who knows, it could be more than that. Okay. Now, we're going to go down to the cellular level, which means I'm going to explain the process of exocytosis. Okay. In an axon terminal, we're talking about a neuron, and a synapse and an axon, and how the brain communicates with each other through a process called exocytosis. Okay. Your synapse has a structure on the synapse called a ion channel, and it can be calcium, potassium, or sodium ion channels on your synapse. In your axon terminal, there is something called a synaptic vesicle, where the neurotransmitter or brain chemical sits in the synaptic vesicle. There is an electric charge from your axon hillock that makes the neurotransmitter remove from the synaptic vesicle, and it goes to the synapse through this calcium, potassium, or sodium ion channel, goes across a space called a synaptic gap or cleft, and it binds to a postsynaptic receptor on the postsynaptic cell or postsynaptic cell body. So the chemical goes through the channel, across the gap, and latches on to a postsynaptic receptor. That is called exocytosis. Now, every neurotransmitter has a different function of its, like dopamine. Most of your dopamine sits in a brain structure called the reticular formation, and it goes up a dopaminergic pathway. You have a neurotransmitter pathway where once these chemicals does excitosis, it goes through these pathways to get to other brain structures. And each neurotransmitter, dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine, GABA, glutamate, all have pathways which the brain chemical or neurotransmitter passes through to get to other brain structures or regions of the brain. For instance, you hear this term chemical imbalance or chemical balance. When you have a chemical imbalance, that means your neurotransmitter systems are not functioning properly at a balanced level. They're imbalanced. So that's going to have a negative chemical reaction. It's going to wreak havoc and trigger all kinds of improper functions of the brain. When you have a chemical balance, that means your brain is functioning properly at a neurochemical level. You want to have a chemical balance, not a chemical imbalance. When you use drugs such as cocaine, heroin, weed, alcohol, once it goes through your bloodstream and enters your brain, it blocks these dopamine receptors or GABA receptors or serotonin receptors. It blocks your brain receptors. The cocaine latches on to a brain receptor, and it causes dysfunction in the brain chemistry. The marijuana latches on to, say, a GABA receptor. So when the GABA come across as exocytosis, it's not latching on to the postsynaptic receptor, leaving excess buildup of dopamine or a neurotransmitter, and it produces lots of, say for instance, cocaine blocks the dopamine receptor, and it creates an influx of dopamine. And extreme amounts of dopamine are being triggered by cocaine or drugs. And each drug may affect one or more than one neurotransmitter system, creating an improper brain function. Now, neurotransmitters also are known as chemical messengers of the brain. They are very important in everything we do, from sleep to eating to work. Without the neurotransmitters, we wouldn't even exist. And throughout the entire brain and body, the body and brain are neurochemically communicating with each other through chemicals and hormones. Now, through our diet and lifestyle and water intake and food intake, the proteins and amino acids converge over into neurochemicals. So pretty much your body does everything for you, but you don't want to throw that balance off. You want to maintain a chemical balance with all your neurotransmitters. And it's still, all the scientists are still figuring stuff out. So it's pretty much, you got to learn the nuts and bolts of brain anatomy to have a better understanding and self-awareness of yourself. And then you'll see the big picture more clear when you get a cellular look and understanding of the brain. Then everything else will come together easier than if you approach it from the other way around. Okay. But see, the opioid epidemic, it is a major problem in the United States, and people are taking these painkillers and it's blocking their opioid receptors, and it's creating a problem. People should look more into that, how opioids affect the brain, how alcohol affects the brain. There are videos and stuff out here. I'm just pretty much reciting what I know. I'm not reading a book or nothing. I'm not looking off a paper I wrote. I'm pretty much just talking what I know and what I research, and I'm still learning and researching. Okay, bye.